Okay, so part 3 of unit 4.2, we left off after part 1 and 2 first semester, and picking back up here after we talked about the open field system and the development of crop rotation, the beginning of enclosure acts, putting an end to the open field system, new technology such as the seed drill, the spinning jenny, all of these things, the Columbian Exchange, selective breeding, and so we're going to pick up with the result of that, which is proto-industrialization, and it goes by 3 names: the cottage industry, the putting out system, and proto-industrialization. Talk about proto-industrialization first. Proto means before, so a prototype, just like a car. So it's the thing that comes out before the actual thing comes out, test out all the bugs. So this is before. Proto-industrialization is going to be the pre-industrial revolution. In Unit 6, we'll talk about the actual industrial revolution, but this comes before. Industrial revolution will actually be a direct result of some of the problems with proto-industrialization, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So, the cottage industry is working in houses. The Industrial Revolution, on the other hand, is going to be work in factories. So this comes before the Industrial Revolution. The putting out system is to be explained here in just a little bit. So rural industry is going to become the pillar of Europe's growing economy in the 18th century. Rural meaning working out in the country, not yet in cities or factories. We'll see that in Unit 6. So England has been motivated after the enclosures. After these enclosure acts of the 16th and 17th century, people have been put off that common land. So they're looking for something to do to supplement their income. Rapid expansion of the cottage industry is going to happen because people can't make money off of common land anymore. They can't hop a fence to get a deer or a cow anymore, and they're struggling and need money. And there's not enough agricultural work for all of these people. And if there was work, if you were lucky enough to find it, it's very seasonal because it's agricultural, it's agrarian. And remember, we talked about 80% of the population was agrarian in this time of the agricultural revolution. So we have a lot of people out in these rural areas needing work, needing to make money. And so an industry is going to arise called the cottage industry. And the system works a little bit like this. The merchant capitalist, or you may more commonly hear the term today, entrepreneur, who have money and who are willing to take a risk, make a product. And then they're going to sell this product to make money. So how can I get my product made if I'm the merchant capitalist? How can I get it made cheaply? Well, I can't turn to the city because all the people there are in guilds. And as we learned about in semester 1, there's all kinds of rules, and there's a certain wage they have to be paid. And these merchant capitalists are taking risks, but they still need to make a profit. So they need cheap labor. And so they're going to go out into these rural areas where people are struggling and need money and need work and are willing to work cheaply. It's a form of capitalism. The entrepreneur is taking a risk. They have going to make a product, and they're going to reap a profit with no government involvement. And so, here's how it works. So I'm the entrepreneur. I'm the merchant capitalist. I'm from England, so my raw product is most likely going to be wool. I'm going to take 50 pounds of wool, and I'm going to have it made into cloth. And this is called the putting out system because the merchant capitalist is putting the work out into the countryside, the putting out system, or out there in the country instead of in the city. So I take my wool into the country, and I come back and say, well, how many pieces have you been able to make? How many pieces of cloth have you made? And I'm going to pay so much for each piece of this cloth, or pay per piece of production. I am then going to pick up the product, and I'm going to take it back to the city, and I'm going to sell it. And I'm going to make money, hopefully a large profit because I'm paying cheap labor. And then the whole process is going to start over again. Wool cloth, as we're going to see, especially in England, is going to be the most important product in the textile industry. And then we're going to directly see this again when we get into the Industrial Revolution and textiles in England. So the cottage industry is very much going to be a family affair. We had to work in fields together in the agrarian society, and so now we're going to come together and work in the cottage or the home. A cottage is just as you picture, like here in this picture. It's usually a one room that holds several people, within it. And now you're not only going to have all these people in one room, you're also going to have them and their equipment. And as we're going to talk about, with a loom, you're going to have spinners of this cloth to keep up with that loom, and that's going to be at least 4 or 5 people. So usually there's not enough family members to do this whole process within your cottage, within your family. And so we're going to see some more people making an income, because you're going to have to hire others to do the spinning. And because you're going to need more spinners to keep up with the weaving. Okay, and so this is where we get a term that's not as commonly used today, but I'm sure you've heard it, and it's a term that was definitely used in my generation. But they're going to hire people without families, namely widows or unmarried women. Okay, so they're going to hire women without families, and a term is going to arise for these women. They're going to be called spinsters, which is kind of an old school term for like a dried out woman who never gets married or got married very later, or an older marriage. Okay, and so this is where we get the term spinster. This is directly what it comes from, because they were spinners and they were women without families, and they were brought in. And it was a whole family affair, so not so just these women brought in without families, but kids are going to work too at this time. They're going to be given like tubs with the wool in it, and they're going to get in, and I don't know if you've seen like old school washing machine, it just has like the agitator in the middle. They're going to agitate the wool to clean it. And sometimes, I guess, if depending on what kind of kid you are, if you like to get messy, you could be lucky, and you could also be the agitator that dyed the wool. So they put the dye in with the wool, and agitate that to dye the wool. So like any other system, it's not going to be all hunky-dory and perfect. Yeah, it answered a problem that we have. We have people without money and without jobs and needing things, but it's going to cause a problem because there's going to be disputes that arise between the merchant capitalist and the family in the cottage industry over the number of pieces made with the wool. So you drop off your wool and you say you need this many pieces, and you come back and you don't want to pay. That wool's not up to my quality, or I'm not going to pay that much for it, or I didn't really need that much. And so you have these people working, but there's no contract. There's not any protection for these cottage industry workers. And who's superior in the relationship? It's the merchant capitalist. They can find somebody else. There are tons of rural families sitting there who are waiting to do the same job. 80% of the population have been agrarian, almost 80% sitting and waiting for some work to do. And they have no protection. So the merchant capitalist is free then just to leave them without pay, even for the work that they've done, and go on to the next cottage. So arguments are going to lead the merchant capitalist looking for more efficient ways to get the work done. I mean, we also have the human problem of workers are only going to work as hard as they need to. So you come in and you say, I need this in 2 weeks. Well, they're going to go be married, maybe marry jolly with all of their friends and go to a couple weddings and celebrate or whatever, and save the work, which is going to mean that they work only when needed to and work fast, which equals lower quality and a lower profit potentially for the merchant capitalist. So what's a better way? We're going to get to that in Unit 6. Merchant capitalists will begin to say, why not get all of these cottages together and have them in one big building, a la the factory. So we're going to see this production moving from the rural cottage industry into the factories in Unit 6 with the Industrial Revolution, due to the problems between the merchant capitalists and the cottage industry workers. And this is going to become the factory system later in the Industrial Revolution. The cottage industry, however, is going to flourish in England. You can get all the stats you want from the textbook. We won't go into great detail there, but this is going to become important because we know that the Industrial Revolution is going to primarily start in England with the textile industry and move outward. And so the fact that the cottage industry is flourishing so much in England as a result of the Enclosure Acts and the Corn Laws and all of these things is going to be significant in our talks of the Industrial Revolution. So there's something, every time we get to a revolution, you know that we're going to have to talk about the creation of some new things. And so proto-industrialization isn't any different. We know that there's going to be new knowledge or new technologies developed in these houses prior to mechanized technologies as we move into Unit 6 with the Industrial Revolution, prior to the steam engine. So we're going to be mainly talking about some human-powered new technologies prior to water power. We will talk a little bit about some water-powered instance here, but prior to water-powered and steam-powered technologies. So we're going to need to talk about the first machines that came out of the cottage industry. So proto-industrialism technology prior to the steam engine, we have our first machine. John Kay is going to invent the flying shuttle, which is going to allow the weaver to throw the shuttle back and forth between the threads with one hand. Don't know everything about the engineering process here of the flying shuttle, but it does make the weaving faster. And so again, we talked about the weaving was the fastest process. So by making it faster, what are we going to need? We're going to need more spinners. And so again, you're going to have that influx of people having to come into do that spinning work for you. So you're going to need even more of them. You can read the whole Wikipedia entry on how it actually works. AP Euro is not so much about the engineering behind the machines, but that there are going to be these guys who make these machines that make the production of cloth easier, quicker, and more mechanized, okay, which is just going to directly lead us into Unit 6, the Industrial Revolution, after we get done talking about La Revolution and Unit 5. So what might the AP question be to this? So all of the following had an impact on proto-industrialization except, or all of these things helped out proto-industrialization except. And so you might have a listing of machines or people's names, and then you're going to choose either the one that fits or the one that doesn't fit in that category. So John Kay and the flying shuttle comes first, and then of course, since you're going to have options on a multiple choice, we're going to need to talk about a couple others. So in 1764, we have James Hargreaves is going to invent the spinning jenny, which mechanized the spinning wheel. So here we have the answer to the flying shuttle of how to make the spinning process faster. We have the spinning jenny, which so you can make more threads to feed the flying shuttle. So technology, of course, always feeding off itself. It's multi-spooled, so you get more spinning done with one person operating it. Believe he named it after his only daughter. So I believe he named it after his only daughter or a daughter, but it's going to mechanize the spinning wheel and make the threads. Make more threads to feed the flying shuttle. And so in answer to that spinning problem, then in 1769 we get Richard Arkwright invented the water frame, which improves thread spinning as well and water technology. He is going to improve the spinning here again with the use of water. And then in 1779 we have Samuel Crompton who invents the spinning mule, which is going to combine the best features of the spinning jenny and the water frame, so technology feeding off of each other, and all of these inventions leading us more towards water power than human powers that have been before. And so then we're going to see this increase in water power leading us up to what we're going to talk about in the Industrial Revolution in Unit 6 to finally steam power. And so all of these things answers to the need for more spinning and to increased weaving and to better production to help the merchant capitalists, and all reaction to these enclosure movements, which had led to proto-industrialization, and proto-industrialization going to lead us into European maritime expansion, which we're going to be discussing this in Unit 4.2, 3, and 4, mercantilism in the Atlantic economy next time.